You're listening to the Around the Lens podcast, the home of high-quality, roundtable, visual journalism discussion about the news, topics, and gear related to our career field. Now, here's the host of our show, David J. Murphy.
Hey everyone, I'm David J. Murphy. Welcome to this special midweek, unexpected, unplanned, pseudo Around the Lens episode that you're watching right now. If you happen upon this and you're like, why is Around the Lens in the middle of the week and it's just Zach and Dave? Well, there's a reason for that. I'll get that to in a minute. But for those of you who may have not, who may be new to the show and have only started watching within the last year, Zach is, of course, the host with the most, the original OG Around the Lens co-host, who's been, tied up with other things, and also I have not made it easy for him because of the change in schedule with moving to Korea. But glad to have you on, Zach. Zach Roberts. Tell people quickly who you are and your little background about those from unfamiliar with who you are.
I'm a photojournalist, obviously. I cover mostly, unfortunately, mostly like the far right when it comes to, like, I was at Charlottesville. This is the 3-year anniversary of the Tiki Torch March, unfortunately. But also I'm a investigative reporter that covers voter suppression and things like that, and a Nikon user.
Sorry for your loss. No, I'm just kidding. I love Nikon. By the way, have you seen the rumors about the new Z5? The Z5 is not rumored, but I know there's Z6S or Z6 Mark II or something.
God, I hope they don't do those names. I just want a new camera name, like, or even if it's like the Z, I don't know. There's like Nikon rumors had some like interesting things that I dream of. The biggest thing with the that I'm excited about is the new battery, which is, I can't believe our words that I'm saying. Super excited about the new battery.
Hey.
But one of the biggest problems with a lot of mirrorless, but like specifically, at least personal level, it's the Nikon's battery life, just the mirrorless battery life, especially, oh my God, when you're shooting 4K video. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh, wow. I have 6 batteries and I'll end up like using them sometimes. But is the fact that they have a rechargeable in-camera battery that's coming out, and that's going to be able to be like a quick longer life and a quick charge. It's the same like battery style and everything like that. It's just like, I guess the tech inside is an upgrade. So with the Z5, they're going to start with that battery, and then I assume whatever new cameras that Nikon ends up coming out with on the higher level will have that great battery, which is going to be really, really big update for me. Also, the new ones are supposedly going to have, the biggest thing is the new ones are coming to the realization that, we really, really messed up when we only put one card slot in. I'm really, really hoping they also give up on the QXD crap. I hate that. It's so expensive, and like, I don't know. I'm sure that there's like great things that it does, but I can't tell. The body of the card isn't as good as compact flash, even was if you're going to have like a larger one, and like the SD cards are now so fast that I can't imagine that you can't do it. I mean, Sony does it, so I mean, like, I don't understand why Nikon couldn't do it. But more than anything, like the idea of buying a 120 gig card that costs over $200. I mean, you can find them on sale for a little bit cheaper, but like that's just yeah.
Well, the only silver lining to that, or at least the manufacturers using those new cards, like Canon has adopted the CF Express format.
Yeah.
I know that, of course, Sony's new cameras have the CF Express Type A or whatever. The hope is, of course, with the adoption of those faster card formats, that because there are more of them, it'll hopefully bring down the production costs. But as long as they still support SD, I think you're okay with regard to the majority of what you can capture with those cameras. I mean, I think the Sony A7S III is a perfect example of doing it right, because you've got the dual SD card slots, you've got the dual CF Express card slots, and you only really get like one additional sort of recording format or capability. Yeah. You still get about 90-95% of the capability of the camera just with high-speed SD cards. Which, if you look into what what they cost, like the extremely high end of the SD, even in the UHS-2 sector, they're extremely expensive too. I know I bought them, but again, hopefully, again, if you want the speed to do like the 8K and the 4K 120 and all the other cool stuff, I don't know. I think SD. I mean, they could come out with maybe a UHS-3 variant of the card, right? But then you're talking about still a new card, so to speak, that you're going to have to buy.
For me, one of the biggest problems is that I'm still currently in the. I have a D750, which is a 2 SD card slot, and it's a standard DSLR and a mirrorless. That's what I use. And so one of the big problems is I have like a catalog of SD cards, and I have 120 gig card that you have to make the decision to switch out and things like that, and it's just I don't know. It's just annoying. I get with all new changes and that sort of thing, and that's that was, but it's just it's especially annoying considering like it's everything Nikon, at least, is what I can speak about, is made all the things that like I can still use all the lenses. I have not noticed a single difference when it comes to speed and everything like that. The Nikon lens adapter has been fantastic. Everything works just like the other Nikons, except this damn card thing, which is so annoying. Even the same batteries work. Like I can use the batteries interchangeable, which is fantastic. It's just like one of those really stupid annoyances, and usually it doesn't even come up. But like the last event I covered, I've started shooting everything in 4K because the still, when you could capture frames and take still images, which is what I always use, it's the highest. Obviously, it's the highest quality capture, but also like, oh my god, I mean, it's so with Premiere and everything like that, it's so easy to on a really sunny day like do minor fixes. It's like Lightroom, it's like you just like slide a little scale and that sort of thing, and you can save video that's like overexposed or underexposed so easily that I think you probably could go back to early episodes and there's probably episodes of me going, I don't understand why people need this 4K. 1080p is perfectly fine. There's no television set out, and mind you, I literally just bought a 40-inch 4K Roku TV, so now I'm like, yeah. Thank goodness that I'm never called on these things, but
I should look for old tweets from you and then use them against you.
Oh God, no. I was just having that conversation with somebody where I'm like, thank Lord, in my like weird atheist like kind of like jerk days, they were like, thank God the internet didn't exist.
Indeed. I hear all these conversations about, do you wish you had the kind of internet that, or whatever, the sort of permeance or pervasiveness of social media back when you were a kid? I'm so thankful that didn't exist back when I was a kid, because I did so many stupid things, and I'm glad they're not immortalized in internet forever. In my sort of, I don't know if you saw my Golden Age commentary, but I did mention Nikon and my kind of, not necessarily criticism with them, but in sort of comparing them with the different manufacturers, Canon and Sony, that are each sort of innovating, right, in their own way. Yeah. I posed obviously the question is like, what is Nikon really doing? The one thing I know they're doing right, and you mentioned it, is they have almost a slavish sort of support for legacy. They support legacy lenses, they support legacy batteries. If you're a diehard Nikon user, that going forward with new bodies, you'll be able to use your old glass and et cetera. But beyond that, where has Nikon innovated in the space, and where would you like to see them innovate and kind of obviously counteract or compete with Sony and Canon in terms of what they're, what do you want to see with the next generation of Nikon? What can Nikon do to sort of re-earn market share or mind share?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think everyone always has to remember, F-Stoppers just published a specifically clickbait article that like went into like basically I think the header was like Nikon shouldn't exist. Nikon should just give up and just like close up shop. This is, I'm like kind of in response to like, what was it? Was Olympus the latest one? I feel like there was at least another company that gave up.
Olympus left the digital imaging market. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I just thought there was a. Anyway, but I can't think of what it would have been. But yeah, no, I mean, that is a big problem. I mean, one of the problems like that I found as well is that since their commitment to innovation when it comes to like turning their DSLRs into more video bodies, which is what all the other companies are starting to do more and more, is the fact that you can see my biggest problem has been the surrounding world of like buying cages, buying all these different specific things that you do for doing video work, professional video work, doesn't exist in the same way as much as like Sony. Like if I need to find any little tiny thing that I possibly might need to use video on a Sony, it exists. Like a dozen different companies make it. You can find a Chinese knockoff on it for whatever. But like, like this random thing, like I'm probably going to buy a cage for my Z6. And one of the big things I'm like, I just need is like, there's a certain point, I need the HDMI, the mini HDMI out. I need a holder. So because I was doing a bunch of video work when I was working in the White House, and one of the biggest problem was if anyone moved or yanked that HDMI cable, it immediately moved. Like it just moved so easily. And also it's a really I think one of our friends, CS, I think he actually ended up having a problem where his out got damaged.
Oh no!
And so basically the camera became completely pointless for a while.
Wow.
For his purposes, for that specific job purposes, because I took over the job that he was doing anyway. Long story, but it's since they've never been really good at it seems talking about it and talking what their innovations are going to be and like what their commitment is, in the same way that at least I feel like Sony and even Canon have. I know that they're committed to this world, and I mean, like obviously they are. I mean, obviously Canon is. I mean, they took their long time getting around to doing it when it comes to the mirrorless. They came out with that first gen of mirrorless, which I mean, I guess Nikon did that too with that J camera that I is still perplexed on what the point of that camera was. Didn't you have it?
Yeah, their first attempt at mirrorless, like their mirrorless point and shoot, interchangeable lens, micro four third camera. Yeah, I had that for all of a year. It was well. I mean, I don't know. I used it a few times, but I was like, this is what we're using now. I mean, nah. When you've used a Panasonic and they're beautiful mirrorless cameras, despite their sensor size. And I'm still looking forward to the GH6 whenever that comes out. I am a little bit, regretful, partially because I did sell almost every single one of my lenses in order to earn, gain money to buy the 5D or the R5. So I'll if Panasonic like next week announces the GH6 and it's the next coming of camera gear that can do everything that all the other camera manufacturers can do but better, I will feel a little bit of a sting of regret by selling all my glass. But I know that even if Panasonic does create the best thing since sliced bread compared to the other guys, if they still continue to use their focus system, their sort of contrast detect focus system, it's still going to be inferior to what Canon and even Sony are doing with their phase detect and dual pixel, whatever. I mean, that's the one thing I'm so looking forward to in terms of going back to Canon is their eye autofocus. It's just been, I've been seeing all the reviews and watching every single person's video, and they say it's like, it's unbelievable how good it is. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. Even if I'm not using all the video features because the camera overheats, I'm still going to be extremely excited to use the photo features and that eye autofocus. Yep. It's going to be like, again, people consider it like cheating almost because it's so good. But that's like one of those things that like it has been very interesting. I find that I very rarely use my, like I have
I have my D750, and I still basically it ends up being a lens holder.
Right.
It's like a, actually not that expensive lens holder anymore. I think you can get a used one for like $400. But it ends up just being that, because everything is so much better and so much easier and so much quicker on the Z6, on the mirrorless, and just being able to see things. The low light is ridiculous, and so it has made everything just so much, like, I feel like I have to start, like, I've been looking at my still work, because basically my still work has been comprised mainly of screen grabs from my, or frame captures from my video, and I've been getting really lazy with that, and because again, it's just so easy, and so easy to do both now, that I haven't been focusing on one or the other, which is a problem. But it's yeah. I kind of wish this, going back to the internet thing, where I was like, I wish that when I first started photography, that I could have just walked right into this, walked into these cameras. It would be so amazing. On the other hand, I wouldn't, when everything goes wrong, I wouldn't know how to, I wouldn't know how to pick an aperture and do things like that, because I keep my cameras on completely on manual.
Yeah.
And
manual focus as well.
Focus, but manual aperture and ISO and everything like that. And because I just, it's like long, working in film long enough, you end up knowing, knowing what you can look at a scene and know what you need to do.
Yeah.
But if I didn't grow up on that, it would be, anyway.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I mean, I'm the same way, but I always show an aperture priority myself. I'll switch to manual when necessary, but typically I can get the job done. I'm looking for that, shallow depth of field in 90% of my shots anyways, so it's like aperture priority works for me, and then I just kind of let the camera do its business, especially now with, ISOs being so incredibly flexible, and image quality. I remember back, my first digital cameras, if you went above 800, it was a snow field. But nowadays, I mean, especially with the A7S III, that is a real magical camera, and in terms of what it can do, up to 16,000, I believe, is still extremely usable. And that's one of the reasons I would add that to my collection, is sort of my low light camera of choice. And really just like the 4K video camera you need, that's the one you want to get, not the R5 or really much else out there. It's the one to get.
That's been the really disappointing thing about the Z5, is that they got rid of some of the video features.
Really?
Because I was just gonna. Yeah.
It's like their lower end model, so
Yeah, it's their lower end model. I mean, so it makes sense. I mean, it's cheaper.
Yeah, it has dual card slots.
I always buy everything used, so it's not like it's not too surprised. It's not like a feature for me. Is the fact that it's I think $1,400 or something like that, new just for the body, and maybe the adapter comes with it. I forget what the sales are right at the moment, but you can get a used Z6 right now for $1,500, and so I don't really, personally, I don't understand that, other than the battery, and then I think that you can basically keep it charged, so you have a power supply, and so you can keep going, which is something that for longer video work, I actually I'm really looking forward to the next Z6 or the Z7 or whatever model, so I can do that, because that's one of the biggest limitations of doing, if you're going to do, I mean, haven't had to do it, but a campaign event and that sort of thing, where it's an hour and a half of people talking, you have to basically make a decision on when you're going to drop out a battery and change it in, because even with the battery grip, which has been one of the biggest complaints, it's too bad Travis is on this, because I'm complaining about Nikon so much, but is the fact that the battery grip from Nikon does not flow. It stops, runs out of a battery, and then you go to the next one.
Oh wow.
Which is pointless to me.
Yeah.
It just adds oh, cool, I'm adding an extra, half of a camera weight to the camera now. It's the whole point of this camera was to go lighter, and but yeah, no. I am really if I had the extra money to just play around, the one camera I actually would really consider getting from Nikon is the Z50. It's their crop sensor mirrorless, because it is, I don't know about considerably smaller, but it is smaller. And also then, but it has, I think it has almost all of the same features as the Z6, and just with a crop sensor. And, you know, I mean, I don't know why. I don't know. I can't imagine switching back to shooting a crop sensor, but I also don't know why I'm shooting 99% of what I'm shooting. I don't think it would make a damn bit of difference. I mean, maybe the low light type of thing and being able to pull out stuff, that sort of thing, but I don't think that much, you know, like I don't think it's so good. I mean, with the video, it's actually like the video on the Nikon is like actually a problem because I'm trying to edit it on my now like 3-year-old laptop or 3 or 4-year-old laptop. It's kind of an issue, but yeah. So, you
know, our older or longer listened fans of the show, hearing you talk about shooting on a crop sensor, would call that sacrilege. Sacrilege, Zach. How many times have I seen this comparison when people like, what? Well, oh, okay.
But we weren't talking about crop sensor. We were talking about micro four third, which is like, you know, the size of an LSD stamp. Like, it's not that big versus, you know, but yeah.
Okay, Zach.
I literally just saw a photo of one a couple days ago, and so, but anyway. No, yeah.
But anyways, no, that's interesting that you kind of bring that up. Yeah, I mean, again, that was one of the biggest sort of advantages to, you know, the Micro Four Thirds line is their smaller size, and obviously I have the 24 to 105 millimeter lens. I did get my RF lens first, obviously, because I'm still waiting for the camera to get here. So I've got that camera lens, and it's not as bad, I think, as the old EF series glass in terms of its weight. You know, I think when they re-engineered, obviously the mount, they also re-engineered the weight distribution, how big. So they're meaty lenses, you know, but it doesn't feel as bad as the old series. But it'll be interesting to go back to that full frame, large size glass and kit and whatnot.
You're not. You said you weren't getting the adapter, right?
Yeah, I don't have any. I have one old Canon lens, a 50 millimeter.
I mean, like for me, it really comes down to the wide range. Immediately getting the adapter is like you have access to 30 years worth of lenses that you can put on there, and also the bigger thing too is so much cheaper. So much cheaper.
Right? Yeah, I don't. I mean, so. You know, I've heard of people say that the lenses work just as well, you know, with the adapter, the old lenses, but I've also seen some tests that show the autofocus not being as fast with the older glass, and if that wasn't a need for me, then I could see that being something I would look into. But I think with, you know, for me personally, a new system, I want to use the glass that's intended for the system, the native mount. I don't want to put something in between there. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, I'm looking for used RF glass, which is still extremely expensive, like $2,000 for a used lens. I'm like, but I don't need all that glass right now. I'm gonna be fine with the 24 to 105, and I chose the 24 to 105 because of it's cheaper. Generally, it's been out for longer. You can get better used deals, and it's more versatile than like the 28 to 70. But if I was building the trifecta or the Holy Trinity, I would go with the, you know, the 28 to 70, the 15 to 35, and the 70 to 200. And I actually produced a video yesterday, and I tested this new overhead camera rig I have to try and do like unboxings and stuff. And I just tested it with playing around with the lens and talking about my thoughts about why that is. So I've thrown that up on our Patreon page, and I'll eventually make it free and available to everybody later on this week. So, you know, if you care about what I think and why I choose my lenses, there you go. I don't know, what would you do, or, you know, if you were starting with a new system, you know, you had to start completely fresh from scratch, what would be your first lens that you would buy for a new system?
You know, I, for so long, because I could never afford the, you know, the photojournalist lens, the 24 to 70 2.8, and I always shot with a 17 to 35 and 17 to 35 2.8, or when I had a crop sensor camera, Tokina has a still fantastic 11 to 17 to 2.8, which is built like a tank. And anyway, you can go back to previous episodes, and I probably at least every other episode talk praises about that lens. And still wish I could have it.
I need like a soundboard of previous quotes you've said, Zach. Yeah. Like a button for a rant, a button for Micro Four Thirds.
Stories though, at least, and what I like, as opposed to when I was, of course, it's being the anniversary. It was like when I was at Charlottesville.
Yeah.
But Occupy Wall Street is more of the stories.
Yeah.
I never really dug the 24 to 70 whatever. Like, it just didn't, like, I liked wider, I liked getting in closer, and I just happened to my 17 to 35 stopped working on the mirrorless camera, which supposedly it's not even supposed to work, but it was working, and I think something broke, and it doesn't connect correctly. So I haven't been able to use my 17 to 35 for most of the work that I do. So I finally broke down and bought, like, basically one of the older versions of the 24 to 70, and like the, professional level, a Nikon. And oh my God, it is not only for video purposes. It is, I can't imagine using anything else. I did have a 24 to, I think it was a 24 to 120 Nikon. It's like the kit. It's the kit lens basically that comes with the Z6, and that was great. It was an f4 throughout. I didn't like the build though, because it's like a step down on the build quality. Still fantastic, amazing for $500, but I also then just bought the used 24 to 70 2.8 used, and it was like $550 or $600 or something, from either I think I actually bought it from Robert's Camera in Indiana. Which actually is a fantastic. Like, I've just been trying those out, and because I think there's something availability, and they've actually been really, really, really good outside of like the B&H and Adorama, duo. But I would probably, the first lens would be the 24 to 70 2.8. I would love to get the VR. I can't even imagine how much better that is. And then get a 70 to 200 2.8, and basically that's all that I shoot with. I have I have my 35 millimeter 1.4 from Sigma, which I still love, but the low light is on the mirrorless camera is so amazing that I don't find that I need it in almost any scenario. And it being in mainly what I shoot, like I need to be able to have some range. And especially in the pandemic, like you can't, like this has like been one of the biggest things is like I think everyone's been going nuts because like I know how many photographers love to get up close and like get that like and I'm like I don't see as many people doing that anymore. I shoot most of if I'm going to shoot a portrait of somebody, I try to shoot with my 70-200. Just gets it gets the better compression in the background and everything like that. And but just in general, like that's what I've been shooting that with. I don't like how the portraits look in 24 to 70 as much. I think it's just, I don't know, it doesn't have the look that I like. I either want wider or farther away, like one or the other. But yeah, those two lenses, and probably I don't know what kind of 1.4 I would carry around, but either a 50 1.4 or a probably an 85 1.4. If my Sigma wasn't so knocked around, I would probably sell it, and it works perfectly fine, but it's had a couple drops and things like that, like all my gear has,
of course, or been hit by a baton.
Hit by batons. I actually, one thing I will say is like I am damn amazed. I had a really bad drop a couple months ago with the Z6, and I was like, okay, it's definitely gone. Like, because it doesn't feel like it. It feels solid, but it doesn't have like the bulk that like even the 750 or the other DSLRs have. And I thought, I'm like, it was 100% gone. No, it was perfectly fine. Like literally is no problems whatsoever. But yeah, those two lenses and probably a 1.4 of some kind would definitely be my kit. I would absolutely love to get the mirrorless 70-200 that Nikon just came out with, but it's like, I think it's $3,300.
Yeah.
And like you can buy a 70-200 VR1 or VR2, even probably a VR2 these days for under $1,000. And I can't, there's no scenario where I can justify the price difference. Like, it can't be that good. It can't be $2,300 more good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I knew for a fact I was going to build out my kit to the full trifecta, and I was going to buy more lenses, and I was going to use that right now to do photojournalism on the street, and I'm going to go out and shoot a protest or shoot an event or something like tomorrow, yeah, absolutely. I would have went with the 28 to 70 f2 as my first lens, with the knowledge that, okay, I'm going to build out the rest of my kit, very soon. But knowing that I won't build out my kit for who knows when, years potentially.
Yeah.
24 to 105 does what I need to do. It gets me the range, and you're not losing too much with regard to stoppage.
And that's f4 throughout?
It is f4, yeah. They make a cheaper version, which is like a f4 to f7. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere near that. Yeah. They also make a 24 to, I think, 200 something, 240 or something like that. Yeah. It's a cheap garbage plastic lens that I would not recommend purchasing unless you do not care about what your photographs look like, because the reviews I've seen on that have been, this is just hot trash. So I would recommend, again, 24 to 105, very inexpensive lens nowadays. You get very cheap, and it's great quality. It has that, you can do the dual motor, stabilization, lens stabilization. You get like 8 stops, so you're getting the same equivalent capability of all the more expensive glass in a less expensive housing. I want to talk to you about you said the 3rd anniversary of Charlottesville. You said obviously before the show that it'll affect you and you're going to stay off the internet. What does it mean to be the 3rd anniversary of this event? What does that mean, Charlottesville, mean to you, looking back on it, reflecting on what you went through, and what you documented, and what people, obviously the other people went through, the ones who were, I apologize, I don't remember his name, but of course the man who was, beaten.
DeAndre Harris, yeah.
Thank you. What does it mean for you, and have you caught up with those people? What's going on there?
DeAndre Harris has done like a total of 2 interviews since. I think he did an interview with Esquire, and I think I haven't. I still am theoretically working on a film. Haven't been able to get the funding together and everything like that. But eventually I'll reach out to him and try to interview him and follow up with him. But he's pretty much he got so many death threats and so many everything that he had to leave the town. And he left his job. He was a teaching assistant. He's, as far as I can tell, based on the interviews, he's doing fine now. Washington Post had a really good piece on him, interview with him, kind of like catching up with him about like how he's doing and what the effect has been, and but yeah, no, I mean it's I think I've probably told this a million times, but I mean, like, Charlottesville was supposed to be I was actually going to quit photojournalism as a job, as like, what I, it's like as the only thing I do. I'm going to try to find like, a real job somewhere. Not doing, what I really love to do, which is, document things. And so that was literally it. Like, that was the last assignment I was going to cover. I was probably going to sell some of my gear because I was like dead broke and just kind of exhausted from trying to cover things. Because I was covering so much of the same thing every time. It was just like protest after protest, and like, while that's why I still like to cover. It like, I don't know. I mean, if anyone remembers way back when in 2016 and early 2017, there was, just big protest rally after big protest rally, and nothing really ever came anything. The March for Science, the Women's March, everything like that. Basically, zero, like a handful of people from the Women's March, entered Congress and things like that. So I mean, like, there's some level of change, but like, it didn't do anything to an extent. And so, like, as a person who is, I'm sure everybody who listens remembers me, like, an activist at heart, when it comes to, like, I'm more than just, just a straight journalist and everything like that. That Charlottesville and what my work and my colleagues' work who were there as well, and like, because there's a big group of us that kind of like, obviously kept our back, we usually travel in groups so that we keep each other safe and everything like that. And but it changed what I thought my work could do as a photos. Like beforehand, my photos would be like, oh, get a couple dozens of likes on Instagram, and people go, oh, it's so nice. Oh, yeah, it's so nice to see so many people together and rallying and things like that. And now, like my photos from Charlottesville have had 4 people arrested, a couple other people doxxed that they're still trying to find. There's at least one person that was I don't know if he's technically actually on the run because there's no warrant out for him or anything like that. But I got Nazis in prison. That's cool. I don't usually quantify things like that. If my photos of literally almost anything else, like a car accident or whatever, just somebody get into a fight, if my photos got somebody in prison, I wouldn't necessarily feel one way or the other about it. But these are reprehensible people, and I'm okay with making that statement. But also now my photos are I know researchers use my photos to talk about the different white supremacist groups and different far right extremist groups that are out there. Been cited a bunch of times in publications, and just everyone has used those photos as kind of an illustrative thing, which is actually something that's a little bit annoying. There's a photo that I posted on Instagram that of a Tiki Torch March. It was actually used in an ad campaign on MSNBC. I made a whopping $45 from that. I always like to add that because it's if anyone who thinks that I'm banking money somehow on other, on this sort of thing, and it's it's not really happening. But I checked on my wire service is Nerve Photo, and they actually now compile what's your most popular photos and things like that. And that's my most popular photo. This photo of it's a shot down the middle of a bunch of people just about starting to march the Tiki Torch, and they're all yelling. In fact, 1 or 2 of them are throwing up a Sig Heil, salute, and obviously I understand why that is, and I'm I actually I don't have any I don't think that I could probably pull it, but I'm tired. I'm actually kind of tired of seeing the photo because there's other photos that could be used, but also it's used now as a photo to just talk about the far right, and it's it's the far right is more dynamic than. I'm not defending the far right, but it's more dynamic than a bunch of Tiki Torch idiots. And that's one of the problems is that this is the thing. I'm actually working on a piece right now connecting kind of the intellectual far right to the people in the streets. People that get into fights and carry Tiki Torch marches and things like that. And we've had as I said in the Instagram post as well, where I was just it's been 3 years, nothing has changed. We have one presidential candidate who is using Charlottesville imagery. Joe Biden, he's using Charlottesville imagery in his first opening campaign. He has had no promises to change anything, to confront white supremacy. The only thing is to get rid of Donald Trump, and supposedly somehow that's going to fix things. And then there's Donald Trump who says that there's good people that were there. So that's what it's kind of a depressing the first year there's memorials and that sort of thing, and they actually tried to do a Unite the Right 2, which was happily a very failed adventure. Only 12 people showed up in Washington, D.C., and 5,000 people counter-protested them, so that was actually nice. But I assume there's going to be quiet memorials in Charlottesville, and that's really all that's probably going to happen. I'm sure they'll talk about it on the cable channels. But yeah, it obviously changed my life. I now cover the far right pretty much everything I do, and the far right now comes in so many weird ways. I covered a Blue Lives Matter it was actually a Back the Blue rally in Albany, New York, and the Oath Keepers, which is a SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center designated extremist group, was the MC of the event, and they were holding up the sign that said "Hold the line" with the blue line across it and things like that. and they were just and then a group called the head of a group called the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers of America, which is basically a group that believes that the sheriff, the local county sheriff, is the final and be all of the Constitution and gets to decide on whether laws are constitutional or not. It was an interesting. I also got into. I usually don't get into arguments with people, but I got into a full-fledged argument with that guy. But it's also they also with the Oath Keepers and also they're definitely connected to the extremist right in a very uncomfortable way. The idea that law enforcement officials are connected to them. I mean, like they're friends with the Oath Keepers. The guy actually cited the Oath Keepers as the inspiration for him starting the group. And so it's been amazing. I mean, covered all these anti-mask rallies that have been happening across, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and in Syracuse and all these places. And Proud Boys, which is a Western chauvinist gang that is also an extremist group, and I've witnessed them get into dozens of fights over the years. And they were prominent at these anti-mask rallies, and so it's been 3 years of watching, and it's always been. And this is something I always want to emphasize: is like these groups and that sort of thing have been around for years. I mean, like I said, Oath Keepers been around. They founded conveniently in 2009. It's weird that they suddenly have a problem with constitutional oversight when a black president is elected, but not when George Bush was around. But these people have been around for over a decade, and all these groups have been around. And I think that people are finally noticing, which is, at least noticing that it's not just the Klan. I mean, like, it's just not these guys in white robes that burn crosses, is that it's pervasive in our society. And like that's been the only thing that's been kind of keeping me working at all, because the money is certainly not there, and especially in the middle of a pandemic when events aren't happening and things like that. So which has been a big hit to me being able to continue doing work and things like that. I did get the PPP loan, which was great. I got a whapping $600 from the government when it comes to the loan.
Now $400.
What's that?
Now it'll be $400 or $200 or whatever it is.
The loan, the small business loan.
Oh, okay.
When Ruth Chris Steakhouse got $20 million, I got $600. I mean, obviously bigger company, but it's always like what my value over 3 months of like equivalent. I've heard a lot of photojournalist stories about that, but it is nice that finally, under this, I mean, I shouldn't say it's nice, but I mean, like, at least under this pandemic, people have started, like, the conversation. Uber drivers just got recognized as employee. They have to be considered employees.
Really? Wow.
And at least in California. And so you have things like, oh my God, finally freelancers, which, most of the photojournalism community these days are finally being considered, something other than just, I don't know, wanderers of the countryside that somehow make money but aren't either. We're not employees, and we're also not, our own business.
Right.
And so, like, I mean, at least we got that going for us in the middle of a global pandemic. So, yeah. Yeah,
and according to a majority of corporations, you don't deserve to be paid for your work. And if you do, you get paid maybe 90 days, 120 days, whatever they're going, whenever they get around to it, You can survive for that long without money.
So, Verizon, though, still expects me to pay my cell phone every month, and my credit card still expect me to do it every 30 days. It's weird that those same companies, if they were to buy my photos, would somehow expect it okay that they pay me in 60 to 90 net or whatever.
Or they pay you an exposure. They'd be like, listen, we will put your name at the bottom of this. That'll get you so much business.
Yeah. Oh my God. No. I've had that a couple times already. I've actually some of my older work I've actually been like because I work with some writers that specifically write about and investigate like the far right, and I've just been like, you know what? Like, as opposed to you using some terrible stock image of like a Nazi or something like that, because that's what your editor is. Here's 2 photos. Like, I know that's a mortal sin and everything like that, but I'm like, look, and I know the Daily Kos is never going to buy photos
Right.
in a million years.
Yeah.
But they will pull an image off of wiki, or whatever. And I'm just like, oh no, please just use my photos, because at least then they make sense. Like, and maybe I'll get some buzz back or something. But that's where we're all, at. I'm still on unemployment, so it's at least I got that going for me. But yeah.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully, things will turn around, and this pandemic will turn around. But you mentioned obviously that this Charlottesville kind of got you re-energized, right, in terms of your profession. And we kind of talked about it, but in the past, and I know you said you don't get too much money from your imagery there, but obviously I think the fame, not fame, but I mean the recognition that image got, because it was like one of the top 100 lists of many places. We talked about it. You obviously are working with a lawyer to track down people who use the image without paying you rights and stuff and copyright infringement. Has that helped out? I mean, or is that just?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I wouldn't, if it wasn't for Leibowitz, my copyright attorney. It wouldn't. I wouldn't be doing. I definitely wouldn't be doing this. I'm like, I'd be still. I'm not going to stop. Like before Charlottesville, it was like I just need to stop. I need to either go into a different field of journalism and start writing and doing research and stuff like that again, which is how I started as a journalist. Photography was always like, oh, I know how to do that, but like it's not like what I do. And I was just gonna kind of like try to go back into that world and get like a real job as a show. But like if it wasn't for the copyright lawsuits, unfortunately, and I know that's the way. I'm not the only one. Yeah. A lot of photojournalists who I know who are like, I made more money last year from copyright lawsuits than I did from work, which is always insane because like all of these places that steal the work and do whatever, like. Every once in a while it's a misunderstanding and it's it's like, oh, because so many people that are working in a lot of the churn and burn kind of websites that exist, news websites that are out there, a lot of these people are just just content writers. They're not journalists or whatever. They just know how to write and take info from other people's work and then process it into a more digestible article and then go for it, and like a lot of Daily Kos is, I mean, I'm like not citing, I don't know why I'm citing them, but I mean like a lot of that stuff is like it's just taking, like blogging was back in the day, like when we originally thought of blogging back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, it was just like it was very, very few people actually did original work. It's just so it ends up being like nobody knows. People still to this day think that you can, if a photo's on the internet, you can just grab it and use it. Or if they have it's like I still think about the argument I had with one person who was very clearly an intelligent person, because he wrote an article about a subject, and he's like, no, this is I can use your photo because it's fair use, and it was just like, no, you're literally using it as an illustrative point, like you're literally using it in an editorial way you should buy it. But it was a very long argument, and like I had a threatened lawsuit, and finally, like it was before I had a copyright attorney, so I didn't know what to do. And so it was literally just like, I don't want my photo used by this guy's site because, but it's this is, I think, the state we're in, and one of the big problems too is that all the courts so many of the courts in the pandemic have been closed or very, very delayed, and obviously copyright lawsuits aren't the priority, understandably, of what the courts are opening, I mean, because you have people literally either sitting in jail in the middle of a pandemic, which is its own dangers or whatever, but it's understandably not a priority. And so like it has been, I have, I think 4 or 5 cases right now that are just sitting and waiting. And that's one of those things where it's always like, it's not a part of my income that I consider, ever. Like, it's not like, oh, I know I'm going to get this money. Right. It's not like my wire service. Every quarter, I get a couple $100 from them. Yeah. For the tiny little residuals and things like that I work, and then, like you're in streams of income and that sort of thing. It's not something I consider at all. It's always oh, cool, I get to pay some back on this credit card now. Or actually, what I usually end up doing is, oh, cool, I get to go cover this event in the other side of the country or over in Europe or something like that, and then blow the money on work that I haven't found a home for because I'm irresponsible. And I would rather cover things than, yeah. But yeah, no, it's that sadly has been, really the big thing is that, places, between some of the photos going, some of my photos being sold to the Associated Press. They still haven't paid me. And then some of the photos just being up on the wire service, which, you make a decent amount of money over a period of time. But like every individual photo, like Vice uses my photos all the time, and they pay, I get like $7, which is half of the $14 they paid the wires, sort of thing. And so, which I don't have to do anything more. So it's that, income that passive income, that is kind of the only way that a lot of people can think. I don't have to do anything at all, which is the biggest thing. Like, I have my website, and occasionally people will reach out to me and say, hey, I want to buy these photos, which is always nice, because obviously they expect to be charged more than the wire service is going to buy, but they want work that hasn't been used 10,000 times, like I think 11 photos that I uploaded from Charlottesville. Those are the only ones that are up on the wire service. And also just like sometimes like rights and stuff like that are difficult over the thing. Like buying something up for a documentary is sometimes different than, buying it there. But it's, yeah. Like that's one of the big things. It has been life-changing in a lot of ways, obviously, like for most people there, but it has allowed me to do more work, which is the thing that I don't have. Like I can bring up Occupy Wall Street, my year, my massive amount of coverage of Occupy Wall Street. I think still to this day I've made a total of $1,300 covering Occupy Wall Street, which was several months and included an arrest and beating several times, lost equipment, equipment was destroyed and things like that. So actually I probably negative money on it. So actually, but I don't even think about how many cab rides, but like at that point I had a full-time job, and that wasn't the point. That making the money, most of it just went up on my Flickr page back then, because that's all I had. I didn't know what I was doing. But like this is the sort of thing that actually like I had at least somewhat like knowledge of being able to like actually use this so that I can actually do more work, because that at the end of the day it's like I always feel bad. Like I think photojournalists should have some thoughts about the fact that they're making money from, not always, but like in things like human tragedy. Like at the end of the day, the only reason why anyone knows about or anyone cares about Charlottesville to this day is that unlike the literally like hundreds of other rallies that have happened that included massive numbers of white nationalists and white supremacist groups, somebody was murdered. Heather Heyer was murdered. Yeah. And dozens of other people were seriously injured. Some people, lifelong injuries, including DeAndre Harris is still screwed up from that, health-wise and also obviously mentally. And also most of the photojournalists that are there have some level of PTSD just from experiencing it and being inside of it. Obviously I was one of the lucky ones that wasn't when Fields drove the car through the crowd there, the protesters there, and also journalists there. But there was about 7 other times that like I very nearly got seriously injured. I have a photo that I'm trying to remember. I don't think I posted it. I think I posted on Twitter. But I have a photo where one of the people that assaulted DeAndre Harris and who's now in jail threw a pool cue at my head. And which is why I wear a bump cap now all the time. I very, very much could have, been seriously injured from that. I just lucked out that you can actually see in the photo the pool cue is right here. It's like flying past me. It's a blur, and it just flew past me, and you can see his laughing face at it when he did it. But this is a guy, by the way, that has killer on his helmet. So I mean, like he was there for violence.
Yeah.
But it's a thing. I don't know. I haven't talked about this in a while, like so it's but yeah, no, it's been like long term though, like, and I what I've talked to a lot of people who are there, that it's still, even the people that weren't either physically affected or directly, but like you still have this long lingering like I was usually fine in crowds relatively, and now between that and a couple other protests that I had some near close calls with things, now like I've never had a panic attack before, but I was actually in Switzerland last year at a massive, this like I think like 20,000 people in the streets music festival that was like a ongoing parade, and it was a whole thing, and I was blocked in completely in a crowd, and it was probably 100 yards of solid bodies all around me, and like somebody started rushing, like almost like it was one of those, like you can see the layers of how a stampede and a trampling was going to end up happening, and I started having a panic attack from that, and like I had to, like, because there's just no choice around me, like somebody actually like asked if I was okay. At least I assume they asked if I was okay. Nobody around me was speaking English. Shocker, it's Switzerland. But so like there's like little things like that come up, and like just like second guessing every experience. I mean, like I still, like, thanks not just Charlottesville, but covering this world, like I can't have a normal conversation with people like without like, oh, they have tattoos, and I start scanning things and start seeing what their tattoos are, or if they have like symbols. It's just, you end up going into this like kind of paranoia. I don't know if paranoia is the right term, because it's, I got a guy down the street from me that has a Confederate flag on his street. I have to drive by every single day, and just thinking about the fact that like I was on a Stormfront hit list, which Stormfront's a Nazi website, and I was one of the 100 Antifa that was at Charlottesville. Since then, I actually would associate myself more. Back then, it was hilarious because I actually had gotten into a rant at Charlottesville about anti-fascists, and so it's actually funny. I'm like, now I am actually like, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. I can see it. If they followed me on Twitter, they'd be like, yeah, he's Antifa. But Antifa, which stands for anti-fascist, and so yeah, I would hope that everyone is anti-fascist. But I don't see it as a controversial thing. So, but yeah, so I mean, it's like long term, it really kind of messes you up, not just in the way that like, like kind of normal PTSD, but I mean like, and I don't want to compare it to like my personal experience to like somebody in the armed forces that was in Iraq or something like that. But like the way that people talk about, like, you see a bag that's on the side of the road, and people question like a soldier will question what it is, if it's an IED or something like that. But like, I end up questioning like immediately, like, oh, is this person a Nazi? Is this person going to know who I am and recognize my face at this random rally in Ohio that I'm covering? And is this going to be the moment that somebody realizes, oh, you put my friend in jail, your photos put my friend in jail, this is going to be a thing? And so like, that's not something I ever had to worry about when I was just covering like the Women's March and things like that. Like, yeah, occasionally there'd be a protester that would have some problem with, my work or something. I mean, like, didn't like the way I portrayed in an article the protest or something like that, or whatever. And like, and it would just be like, it would be an argument for 5 seconds, and I'd walk away, and it wouldn't be a thing. But now it's just a continual thing, and I think that's like for everyone. I mean, I'm like, everyone around. I'm a straight white male, so I don't really have. This is new to me. That's what I'm saying. Like this experience of like having to question people around me, especially considering I live in a very rural area. This is we have hate groups that are organized within 20 miles of me, things like that. So I mean, like, I know that they exist. And I mean, like, and you know, like, the number of Confederate flags that are around is shockingly odd, considering we're actually we were part of the Underground Railroad, like, if you travel through here, and so we were never part of the Confederacy. But anyway, it's heritage, not hate. But
oh my gosh, that whole Confederate flag, just like, thank you to I appreciate the U.S. military, for making a stand on the flag. I wish, obviously, it had been done sooner, but again, I have to applaud our branches for the services for doing that. I think it should be. I applaud Mississippi for finally doing it as well. So perhaps maybe in another generation or so, we'll see the Confederate flag and its sort of adoration and love for it go, be more diminished. But who knows?
Somebody who will allow the military, which is, I can't believe this is Zach Roberts here defending the DOD. Is the idea that, like, they're not allowed to change the names of bases that are, and I know you can't get it, but like, they're allowed to change. Maybe they'll be allowed to change the names of bases that are named after literal traitors to this country. Like, it's just wild to me, because it's like, oh my God, the military actually wants to do the right thing, and they're not allowed to. So this is there's a lot of, like, more lefty circles or whatever, like, we're so confused, and, like, in the fact that we're on the side of the Marines.
Hoorah! Hoorah! Well, welcome, Zach.
Yes.
Welcome to our side.
Solidarity, brother. Solidarity.
Brother in arms. All right, Zach. Well, this was meant to be like a short little thing, but we've made it into a nice, long, full featured episode, which is great because, again, like I said...
Did you miss having me on when I would...
What's that?
Like, there's no such thing as a short episode when Zach's on. But
I think you have the Guinness Book World Records for longest rants on our program. So, but that's all. We missed that with you, Zach. Haven't had that in a long time, so it's good. A good ranty feeling. But
like,
as I mentioned
Zach
before,
talked for 35 minutes on sensor size.
I know, right?
Somehow brought Trump into it, and but yeah.
Anyways, always good to bring that back. And like I said, I had some technical issues on the last episode. You will get that with this. If you're listening, you get parts of last week or earlier this week along with this. So it'll be a weird episode if you're listening to it. But again, no technical issues during this live stream. Thankfully, we've done it for an hour and 14 minutes here at this point. And that was what this was meant to do, is just test that capability. Because, again, I had so many issues. Literally every single problem that could have gone wrong went wrong. Either it was an issue between the OBS and Skype, an issue with my internet dropping out, my Wi-Fi not working. Every single thing that could go wrong went wrong during that episode. And a lot of it was stuff that I had never experienced before or was out of my control. And a lot of that was due to the fact that I'm using my Apple MacBook, MacBook from 2014 to try and manage this show, as opposed to my brand new computer, which is in the shop right now getting fixed for an issue. So once that's back, we'll resume hopefully using OBS and everything will be right as rain. But anyways, enough of that. Zach, where can people find out more about you and your work?
My portfolio site where you can see all my photos is zdroberts.com. I am starting up and doing most of my work, my news work, at visu.news, the visu.news.
Yep.
And that's where, like, I basically do like 5,000 word photo essays that only come out like 3 weeks after the event because it takes me so long to write them.
The word versions of your rants.
Editing. Yeah.
The text versions.
They're not rants. They're usually. I'm trying to make it more like what I would actually publish. Just because in the middle pen, it's like buying work and things like that. And so like my long-term dream is to work for myself, so I don't have any editors and don't have to worry about people changing my work or doing anything like that. And but yeah.
Yeah, I know you have your own Patreon, trying to obviously you do that to support yourself as well, and you do your podcast on Patreon as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to be starting. I've been saying this for like a year, but I'll be starting a podcast called Isolated Incidents, which focuses on coverage of the far right and interviews, and kind of like a entry level to like, oh, who is Sheriff David Clark? Who is this person? And just talking to experts on the field. And then, so you don't, because I find that like there's only two kinds. Either you have mainstream media that doesn't have any comprehension and will just have literal white nationalists on TV to interview them about, things, which is mind blowing. Or you have like esoteric, like, how don't you have to, the only way you can understand our podcast or our book or whatever is if you read, 32 other sources first. And so I'm just going to try to like do a kind of, here's my learning process of going through and finding out who these people are, and why you should know who these people are. I guess it's
okay. Great, cool. We'll look out for that whenever that comes around, and make sure to let us know, or write something about that on Around the Lens. We'll be happy to send dozens. There's dozens of us, Zach, who will come over to check out that podcast.
Yeah, I know. That's the bad part of like, find out you do like the last piece I did took me like 3 days of work because I was video editing, I was writing, and still work. Drove to a different state to cover the story, and like the traffic, it was like 300 people read this story. So super fun being your own publisher without advertising dollars or like a larger name attached to it, as we all know.
Indeed. If you'd like to follow anything we're doing here at Around the Lens, go to AroundTheLens.com. You'll find links to all of our social media as well as our Patreon. You can support the show, get everything we do ahead of time and early, like my sort of commentary on the lens and everything I'm doing. It's funny you mentioned that you pull stills from 4K, because that's the exact same argument I gave for the 8K, right? Is that you can pull stills from it, and it's just higher resolution stills. So perhaps when Nikon comes out with their brand new 8K camera, the Z6S or whatever, you'll be like, okay, great, 8K it is. Jumping on the 8K bandwagon.
I think I'll wait for a while to start doing that. I mean, at least until the memory card's price go down. Yeah. I mean, I never thought I'd have a problem with covering a 3-hour long event and running out of space for 120 gigs. I covered an event that was 2.5 hours long and somehow blew through 120 gigs worth of like, because of 4K video and things like that. And it's just like, it's wild to me that's even 2 years ago, I don't think I would have ever been like 120 gigs.
Yeah. Welcome to the world of 4K video. 8K is even worse. I bought a 512 gigabyte card, CF Express card for the Canon camera. I'm still waiting for that as well. And I think I can get like 25 minutes of 8K raw footage on that. So
what are you using it though? I mean, this is like still like right now it's still 8K like. I don't think that I would shoot 8K, like even if I had it.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know, I don't have the computer to deal with it. I mean, my computer does not want to deal with 4K right now from a relatively compressed format like the Nikon has. And but yeah, so of course then give me a year or 2 years from now and be like, well, I don't know, I don't think I would use 16K. That's just ridiculous.
32Ks, come on. What do you need with all that?
Oh my God, you can. I mean, 32K is great, but like 60, I don't understand. You can already like take a video from from 2 miles away of an event and just pull in and crop and you're fine. But 64K is a little ridiculous.
Well, I
just see the literal pores on people's faces from 20 feet away in 4K. But
well, Zach, what I do is I just position the Canon satellite that I have in the air, and that has a 256K sensor on it. So I just position that over the protest and I get the shots from there. It's fine. I crop in. Still get a nice 12 megapixel shot from space. So, that's the real use case scenario right there. No, I mean, again, with the 8K, you're right. It is ridiculous if you're shooting raw. I don't think too many people need to shoot raw unless you're working like a cinema production type thing. but there is the all eye 8K and then the like a sort of interframe 8K that take up less data. So I might if I might shoot all eye, which gives you which is about doubles the amount of time you have for recording. And again, that's where something like, again, if I was going to a protest, if it weren't for the overheating issue, I could definitely see myself going to an event, a protest, going to a news gathering event, and just shooting 8K and pulling my stills afterwards. But
I mean, that's actually been because the last two events that I've covered, it was both 90-something degree days and really sunny. And it's actually something I'm like, should I paint my camera white? Because it really, I actually in the middle of the final speech, my camera finally overheated.
Oh,
it finally
wow.
was like, okay, I have to shut down.
Yeah.
For a little bit. And I'm like, ah! And there's no I had to switch over to my D750, which I still the video, 1080p video on a full frame DSLR is still ridiculously gorgeous.
Yeah.
But there is also the problem where I don't know. I still like the look of 1080p better than I like the look of 4K, unedited. Which is all that news wise. I may do a little color correction or a little light or something like that if it's really bad. But it's news work. I'm not. If I'm doing a film or something like that, I would bring it down. It's too sharp. It's just too. It doesn't have a cinema feel to it as much as 1080p to me does. In the same way that I don't know, I've seen films that if they use IMAX film wrong or in a different way, it's just there's just too much information.
Yeah.
I want it to look like a movie as opposed to, I don't know, like a news I want it to look more like a movie than a news broadcast. But yeah. But that's all problems you want to have, I guess, because you can always downgrade. That is the positive nature of it, is that you can always bring it down a couple levels. But
I made the argument, and you can kind of either say if it's valid or not, is that you shoot with 4K, right? You grab your stills, and now you have the 4K video. You can package that up as a separate product and pitch that out to people, right? Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that how you're using your camera?
That's how I do everything. That's how I do everything. It's because. If you sell, depending on what you work with, different news companies, certain companies will have at least demand that you don't sell to other sites. Depending on what your contract is, even if it's just a time thing, if it's not a copyright buyout or whatever. But I still have video that I can then use in my own work, because I often obviously everything I cover is that I upload the stills to my wire service, Nerphoto, and then the video I usually end up using for my own purpose. I still end up using the stills because obviously I still have rights to use them on my own site, but I can also give that video and sell it to somebody else, and so it's actually really I don't think that any news sites, I haven't seen any contracts or anything like that have kind of caught on to that's a thing that happens. That can happen now with mirrorless cameras, but I'm sure it eventually will change for some of the more companies that care more about no, this is our copyright. We were buying the photo outright and things like that. But it'll inside, as I talked earlier, in so many ways it's changed my work. It's changed the way I work.
Yeah.
But it also has allowed me, because one of the big problems that I've had trying to work on this documentary about the far right is that I was physically at some of these events. I witnessed them firsthand. I was only taking stills for the most part. And so yeah, I can use stills of the Tiki Torch March. But in a documentary, you want to use video, and there's so much video out there. So I'm like, I have to now go and buy video of an event that I covered myself, and it's frustrating, because it's not only is that thousands of dollars added to a price for a documentary, especially footage that is such a high. There's only a dozen journalists that were covering it, maybe a dozen journalists. I don't even know if that many. But so anyone can charge huge amounts of money. Most of these people are my friends, so they're going to give me a decent rate, but at least they damn well should. But especially considering some of them stayed on my stayed on the floor of my hotel room. But it's something that now I can cover an event, and I can do both, and It certainly has made my still image work a lot more boring, because I'm worried about covering the scene in video form as opposed to getting that dynamic shot of the depth and things like that. And so it's probably done a really big dent in like photo sales and usefulness of my photos long term. But being able to have both that, either I could sell later on too, especially 4K video, it's a higher premium. But also like being able to work on my own thing, because like long term, especially in the pandemic and everything like that, like long term, like I see myself focusing more on documentary work as opposed to like daily news work. I've never been a daily news photographer in the way that like I cover work every day. I cover big events like once a week or something like that, and that's just, then I write something over well. But like being able to do both has certainly paid for the camera itself, and also being able to it's certainly going to be justification to buy whatever the next upgrade is, and being able to have two cameras now that are able to do really gorgeous video work and have all the capabilities that a mirrorless camera has over a DSLR. Now, if they can any of these people can figure out changing the clip length, that's all.
Clip length? You mean like the
clip length of the video?
Like the 29.59?
Yeah.
Well, that is no longer a law. That used to be a law, like a trade law or thing, and that's no longer a thing. So, like, Canon still having it on their R5 is kind of antithetical to, like, you don't have to do that, Canon. So hopefully,
Nikon has it, the Z5 as well.
It's on the Z5?
Yeah. So I have never understood whether, because I think that I've actually been really frustrated, because even when I first heard that the law issue was when I worked at B&H Photo Video, and all these people obviously supposedly knew what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But because they actually, imported cameras and things like that. But like, I don't understand, especially if the law's gone and things like that. I don't know.
Sony doesn't have it anymore. Panasonic never had it, and so for any camera manufacturer,
I think that it comes down because Sony has ABC, right? And Panasonic doesn't just do MOV or MP4, right? It's an ABC file or something.
No, it's not the file type. It's not a technical limitation. It was purely a way to not be taxed, and I think Panasonic either paid the tax or somehow they got around that. I don't know, but there is no technical or legal reason why a camera has to stop at 29.59 minutes anymore. And so hopefully we see with firmware updates, those go away. All I can say is from what I've heard on forums and people talking about why the Canon still has it might be because, these cameras are designed years in advance, and so perhaps they started manufacturing or started developing the software and hardware with the limitation in mind years ago. And so, hopefully it's just a firmware update that'll fix it, but knowing when they were going to push it out and that we haven't seen any sort of change and the camera's been out and they haven't done anything with it yet makes me think they may never update it, especially if the Z5 hasn't updated it.
It doesn't make any sense why Nikon has it if this is the reason, but I do wonder sometimes whether the original reasons for Canon and even Sony were to not eat into their video camera market. But I don't understand why Nikon would do that then. Because Nikon unfortunately has never produced a video camera, which I wish they would.
Yeah, that might not be completely off, because they may have thought, hey, why are we going to pay a tariff, or pass that cost on to consumers when we have these perfectly viable video cameras that we want people to buy? And that could be a reason why Canon hasn't necessarily jumped to changing, the thing now, because again, they still want to have that market separation between their high-end DSLR mirrorless and their C200, C300 video line. So,
I was actually wrong, by the way, just about the Z5 and the video K4. That was actually the difference. Is that it's not a 4K limitation. It's they don't have the slow motion. They don't have the 120 frames per second.
Oh, okay.
At 1080p.
Yeah,
that's the only difference. Which I like it. It's super fun. But I've used it before, and it's great. But it's not. It uses so much more room. Oh my god. But yeah, so that's a correction thing. I weirdly, I'm actually looking through the thing, and on Nikon, and I don't see anything specific about. Yeah, no, it's also max recording time is 29 minutes and 59 seconds.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. I mean, I can't.
Somebody's got to know. If you're listening and you have some sort of
comment down below.
I just yeah, no, I mean it's if it's such a confusing thing because I mean it would I mean obviously there's an overheat issue on any DSLR or format camera that's they don't have the fan system and they don't have the cooling, but that doesn't usually cause a problem until like an hour. Like I've filmed long events and that it only starts really causing problems at like an hour length as long as it's in a cooled room and everything like that. But
yeah,
I don't know. If anyone knows, please write in, leave a comment somewhere and tell us because that'd be really great to know.
Yeah, well, we do know that the new Sony A7S III will not have any recording limits, and if you want the Panasonic version of the A7S III, get the GH5, which has no recording limits. I remember I shot like a 2-hour-long thing in 4K that was like a speech or whatever. No issues, just continuous recording. It was great. So, anyways, yeah, not having to worry about limits, artificial limits is a wonderful thing. All right, well, I think that's going to end this week's show. Thank you so much, Zach, for taking time out and hanging out and chit-chatting and catching up and all that stuff. It was great, and hopefully we'll have you back on more often in the future. All right. Well,
the funny thing is I actually switched my sleep schedule around very recently, and just the past week I haven't been able to, like, it just didn't work at 9 a.m. But like now I'm back to my normal sleep schedule where I wake up at like 10:30 and go to sleep at like 4 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm sorry.
No worries, buddy. All right, man. Well, this will all be resolved whenever I get back to the States, so we'll get back to normal. All right, man. Well, this has been weird, experimental, just chit-chat, no plan, no structure around the lens episode, special edition with Zach. I have been your host, and for Zach Roberts, I'm David J. Murphy, and we're out of here.
Thanks for listening to Around the Lens. We hope you enjoyed the show. To continue the conversation, head on over to one of our social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter. To support the show financially, consider donating to us via Patreon. For show notes from this week's episode and links to everything else we talked about, just go to our website, aroundthelens.com. Finally, if you or someone you know might be a good guest for the show, get in touch with us via email at info@aroundthelens.com.